What is up, everybody? Welcome to Half-Ass Pod, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are reviewing the 1993 psychological thriller, The Good Son, starring Elijah Wood and Macaulay Culkin. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to, ladies and gentlemen, Smith. Smith, say what's up to the people, man.
What's up? Hopefully my Wi-Fi works. It was really shitty earlier, but I'll be here for now. So,
And ladies and gentlemen, we have the author, the editor, the creator, the end-all, be-all of not only Walter Paisley Cafe, but Spadell. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Plaid. Mark, say what's up to the people, man.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're doing okay today. And I really, really hope you're not too sensitive about dark stories involving children. Very dark stories.
And this one is indeed
You've been
very
warned.
very fucking dark. Look. So we start out with this movie. Macaulay Culkin's character, Henry. Actually, no, we don't even start with this character. We start with Elijah Wood's character, Mark. And he's standing what looks like, I wouldn't say the Grand Canyon. Is that the Grand Canyon, right? No. So he's standing in some kind of, what do they call those?
a desert?
Just a desert?
I don't
Okay.
What?
So he's standing in the desert, looking off into the clouds, or looking off into the sky, right? And then then the very next scene he goes right into his mother's death. He starts doing it. Was it specified that she died of cancer?
I don't think it was.
Okay.
At least not in the beginning of the movie, if they did say it at all.
So, either way, she died at the beginning of the movie. Obviously, this takes a toll on Elijah Wood's character, Mark. He and his dad travel across the country. They go to Maine and to meet his brother and his family. Obviously, Mark's dad has to drop him off to Macaulay Culkin's character's Henry's family, and so he's there. And this is where this movie starts at. And we get introduced to Macaulay Culkin's character. Very first scene where this dude starts hanging from the fucking the stairs with this mask on, comes downstairs and hands Elijah Wood's character a mask, and they put the mask on and stare at each other. Now, Mark, I'll start with you on this one. I want to know, what was your thought when you first got introduced to Macaulay Culkin's character, Henry, in this movie, where you had this scene where, to me, I looked at it as like, wow, this is somewhat kind of poetic, the way they're just staring at each other for like a good 4 or 5 seconds with the mask on. But I want to know your opinion on this.
Well, I really like the mask. I mean, because it looks like something that somebody could have made. It looked like paper mache. So yeah, but it was great. It was, it was just a blank thing, and how reflective of what it really turns out that Henry, the character Henry, is going to be. A blank face like that, and So I mean, that's like a little hint, but it still kind of goes slow from there, because it's a pretty cheerful beginning for him. Hey, I have one for you too. We could be brothers, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I used to be a goofy kid that liked crazy monster masks that disturbed people. So, why not?
So, what about you, Smith? When you get introduced to Macaulay Culkin's character with the mask, what was your first thought?
Well, I didn't know exactly what this movie was about. I didn't read. You mentioned it. That's the first I've heard of this film, since it came out in 1993. For anyone listening, like, it's kind of old at this point. It's like, what, 20 something? It's like 30 years old.
30 years
almost.
Old.
So I wasn't sure if he was really. I thought this was going to be a feel good story and not like a pseudo horror film. But later on, looking back on it, I'm glad you guys brought it up, because that whole scene with him, where they're both wearing the masks looking at each other, like, what is that, symbolism or metaphoric? I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely something you probably miss if you just watched it and didn't know.
Yeah, that scene to me was very telling of what was going to happen because although yes, I've seen the movie before, watching it for the first time as an adult, I still was very kind of my memory was very cloudy, right? So watching and seeing that scene, I was like, okay, all right. So this is where that dark turn kind of starts. You start getting a little more deeper into what it was. So you start seeing that bond between Elijah Wood and Macaulay Culkin's character, between Mark and Henry, right? You start seeing this bond where they're at the table and they're kicking each other and whatever. And still, to me, you see that playful banter. Then you see where the very next day where Macaulay Culkin he kind of introduces Elijah Wood to somewhat of his lifestyle and what he does, and his what's the word for it? His craziness, right? They're climbing up the very famous treehouse scene, right? Climbing up the treehouse, and then all of a sudden Elijah Wood, I keep forgetting his name, Mark, he gets up to the top of the treehouse. And then Macaulay Culkin grabs his hand. Obviously, he's going to fall. Macaulay Culkin grabs his hand, and this is where this dark story starts to show. Right, it's where he kind of leans in, and I think of this. I probably shouldn't think of it like Lion King, where Scar leans into Mufasa's like long live the king, and then drops him or whatever. Like, but he looks at him and he's like, with a straight, cold ass face. And shout out to Rabbit's content, by the way, because he said it perfectly. He said Macaulay Culkin's a cold one in this one, and yes, he is. He definitely is. But he leans into him and he says, "If I let you go," with a straight ass face, "If I let you go, can you fly?" And I'm like, bro, what the fuck is going on here? What the fuck is this? So I mean, dude, that was just the first. That was the first of what we would see for the next hour of just torment of what this kid does. This kid is twisted in every single kind of way you can think of. And it kind of gives me a little bit of a Norman Bates kind of feel. Norman and Norman Bates kind of feel. And I started feeling that more and more throughout the movie. But I want to ask you guys, as this movie started as this movie started progressing, right? And you're starting to see where his mind gets worse and worse and worse. To me, this was probably the most frightening kid I've seen on film, period, after watching this movie. I have not seen a kid this crazy in a while. I mean, Babadook, however you say it, they tried to do it with that tormented kid, but it was on no level of this guy, on Macaulay Culkin. I think this kid should have won some kind of award for this movie. Maybe he did, I don't know, but probably not, because it only got like 27 on Rotten Tomatoes. But, Smith, I'll start with you, man. Like, during this movie, are you looking at Macaulay Culkin's character? It's like, this dude he's not only just an evil kid, but he's probably one of the most evil kids, if not characters, I've seen on screen.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because I came to this thinking it was going to be like a Dennis the Menace kind of vibe. Like, oh, he's the bad one. But yeah, now that I think of it, I don't remember him, the actor for Henry. I don't remember him in any other movie except for Home Alone. So like, it was a good performance, especially for a kid. I'm almost sort of convinced that it wasn't an act, and he probably is like super fucked up, and he's just being himself, But yeah, crazy performance from him.
Well, I mean, he did go on to do drugs later on in life and become a drug addict. And so I mean, maybe this movie kind of did that for him. But Mark, what about you?
Well, no, for the same reasons that Smith mentioned, I didn't go on to think that it might actually be Macaulay Culkin, and he might have been drawing on something there. I don't know, but at least my thoughts while I was watching the movie, honestly, were actually I think he deserved at least an Academy Award nomination. I thought his performance was fucking amazing, and I think my hat also could go off to the director as well, because oh man, he was so believable in a lot of the scenes where he was showing his psychopathic face. Where he's like, oh, well, maybe there'll be an accident. I don't know. And like how he gets like more like almost adult. You know, he just loses. Not only does he just lose innocence, he just loses the childishness.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know. Um, I mean, I myself, and I wouldn't be surprised if you. I mean, I've met some kids when I was a kid with, you know, in retrospect, going, yeah, that was sort of kind of psychopathic things they did. So, yeah, but they weren't always as calm and collected. Which, of course, you could say, oh well, that's just the way they did it for the movie. But McCulkin, man, he made me believe it. Man, he really drew me in with that character Henry and the way he could just oscillate. But I mean, if I might put on my psychologist hat here, you know, because I read the Wikipedia article and I guess there was talk, you know, about how like there was a book that was adapted from the film where
Okay.
they dig deeper into uh, the idea that Henry's a sociopath, but sociopath isn't really a word that like mental health, you know, behavioral health professionals really use. The closest thing is antisocial personality disorder or ASPD, and psychopathy. Although I mean, we definitely have some meanings about that, like you know, and ASPD is related to it, where you lack a conscience, you have a problem with morals, you have a problem with empathy, you know, and you know, I've also been heard it like described as that the person who could be considered a psychopath or ASPD, they just don't understand remorse. And some people will just toy with it. You know, it's somehow they think they're floating above it. So this is really for me what makes this movie. Like if somebody said, okay, give me the best example you can think of a psychological thriller, it would be this one. I mean, because it definitely puts the psychology in
Yeah.
psychological thriller. That's for sure. So, yeah, and now you know, yeah, it's Hollywood and everything, and we're not talking about people who knows how much background they might have been putting into this as far as psychological knowledge goes. It actually didn't need it. A lot of it's just the colloquial ideas that we have of, you know, psychopathy or sociopathy or things like that. However, it was really interesting because I went and looked back on, you know, like antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy and things like this. So you could definitely look at some, you know, more genuine sources and get a better understanding of where this kid is coming from, you know. And then of course, which is something we'll probably end up getting into later, is the question of evil, not the problem of evil. That's a whole other philosophical thing, but the question of evil.
And we went through a lot with Mark as well because um, what this kid was he was looking for someone to replace his mom, essentially. Not necessarily like, hey, are you my mommy? But like in the middle of the movie, the dude's calling his aunt his mom, and it was that part to me was kind of weird, but you could see that he was, you know, he was somewhat dreaming, but he's also going through some shit, right? Just shit mentally. So I think everybody in that whole movie, I mean, you go from Mark being the main character dealing with the loss of his mother, and then his dad dropping him off, you know, with his brother's family. So now Mark's with this completely this complete family that he doesn't even fucking know, and now he's got to deal with this twisted motherfucker, right? And then the mom is dealing with the loss of they had a baby or a son or toddler, wherever the kid was that McCauley, that Henry's character, that he drowned essentially, right? Eventually, we find out in the movie. So she's dealing with that, and also dealing with the fact that she's still got this crazy ass son in the house trying to kill the rest of the family. Now, this movie could have definitely been an even darker movie, especially with and look, am I terrible for thinking that, all right, if you really want this movie to be at least a little bit darker, because you remember when they had that car scene, right? That crash scene with the doll that we were talking about. So you like literally right after that scene, you hear on the television that they say, you know, thankfully no one was really seriously injured, but there's 4 people that went to the hospital or whatever. If they really wanted to make that scene dark, they could have said there were some deaths in those crashes. Now, obviously, you know, maybe it may not have been everyone, obviously, just because of the way, you know, the cars are crashing. But if they really wanted to make it dark, they could have been responsible for actual deaths, which could have brought more seriousness to that situation. It's a little things, right? You know, what do you guys think?
Well, on IMDb, it talks about the UK version of this.
Mhm.
They actually cut that whole scene out.
Wow.
Like him throwing the dummy into traffic because they didn't want people to imitate it. So I mean, it's darker than that. At least they kept it in there for the Americans, you know. But yeah, if someone died, it probably would have been like, oh.
It's crazy that people still get, like, that companies still get sued for that. It's crazy to me that people still get in trouble for someone imitated something you did in film, or someone imitated something you did at a live event or something like that, and now you're being taken to court. To me, it's beyond me of how that's still even legally a thing. But we saw a lot in this movie. We saw the fact that Macaulay Culkin's character, as he was getting worse, if you think about it, Mark was getting worse too. This guy, his character, he started having that tug of war of character, right? He started having that tug of war of should I do something? Should I do something now, or should I just wait? Because I seem crazy to everyone else. But at the same time, the only person that really kind of understood him was Henry. And I like that whole dynamic. I like that relationship that they had throughout this movie. Is that one minute they're fighting, and the next minute, you know, they're talking like nothing happened. Now, I know we say this a lot when it comes to, especially when it comes to horror movies, that people are very naive. The mom in this movie, Aunt Susan, boy, was she naive. Boy, was she naive as fuck in this movie. So,
well, to be fair, she was trying to work her way through the death of her infant child. You know, I mean, I mean, that would be one where, I don't know, at least up until a certain point, if I was only going to give the one word theme for this movie, it would be trauma. However, that kind of changes near the end, because at one point I was thinking, okay, well, we've got 3 characters experiencing trauma, but not so much the character in question, as we find out later on, because he didn't have any remorse for the death of his baby brother because he killed his baby brother. So yeah, but we did still have the dynamic of Aunt Susan and Mark experiencing trauma, deep trauma, and Henry manipulating both of those people, both of their trauma in the film.
and you say, like, and after you mentioned trauma, it has me thinking a little bit, because, like you said, he's not showing any kind of remorse whatsoever for anything he does. This cat stayed true to the very end. Now, when it comes to remorse, you would think one would have remorse when it comes to their younger sibling. And like you said, we know he's a cold ass motherfucker because he killed his younger brother. So we know that he's very well capable of killing his sister. And we see these events throughout the, like, remember when they played hide and seek? My first, dude, I was at the edge of my seat. Again, I haven't seen this movie in a while. I have not seen this movie in a very long time. So, you know, a lot of this I did not remember until I remember seeing it. And when they're playing hide and seek, dude, I'm at the edge of my seat. And then all of a sudden, you know, he runs upstairs, and then, you know, Macaulay Culkin, he's sitting there tickling her or whatever. And then that's when they have that face-to-face little, you know, scuffle or whatever. Let me tell you, man, this movie, you talk about the edge of your seat. I was at the edge of my seat more in this movie than I've been in most horror movies that I watched. Not gonna lie. This one really did it for me. And, you know, I want to know you guys' favorite part in this movie. Smith, I'll start with you.
I mean, honestly, this was like harder to watch than Cannibal Holocaust for me. Like, I was like looking away, like, God damn, the amount of suspense in this. So the best scene for me is like the sister fell in the ice, and Kevin McAllister comes up, and he's like just holding his hand above her while she's screaming help and like she's drowning. And I was like, I could barely watch that. I was like, oh my God. Not to mention how slow they built it up. Like, because at first, like I said, I had like Dennis the Menace vibes. I thought this was going to be like a chill family movie or some shit. They build it up like nice and slow, but it's like the perfect pace. So it really fucking freaks you out. Yeah.
Well, it's.
Oh, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's funny you mentioned it that way because there was a lot of dispute and then even some remorse about casting Macaulay Culkin as Henry. In fact, Culkin's father was really instrumental in getting him in the film. I believe there was a connection. I don't know if it was the same studio that did the Home Alone movies, but his father wanted him in The Good Son, in the Henry role, and the deal was that if they cast him then they would sign on for Home Alone 2. And then not only that, he got his sister. That's Macaulay Culkin's sister, Quinn McCulkin, as well. So there was some deal. But after the movie came out, there was negative reviews. Now, there were a lot of them, like from Ebert and Siskel. I mean, I grew up knowing Ebert and Siskel, probably a little bit better. You know, that's more of a Gen X thing. But you know, I don't mean to speak for you, and maybe you know more. But either way, you know, Siskel and Ebert, say what you will about them, there was a lot of moralizing in the reviews and things like that. So they were coming from a place like, oh, it's a dark movie about kids. This is just awful type of shit.
And it wasn't about the quality of the movie, right?
Yeah. They just were like, oh, this shouldn't have been made. This is just you know, they both gave it a thumbs down. And in the newspaper that Roger Ebert worked for, he gave it like a 4 out of 10 stars or something like this. And then on the opposite side, there were a couple of reviews that were, well, you know, they could have gone a little darker. So, you know, say what you will. I don't know if there was anything middling about that, but I think that one of the the film that it's kind of considered bad in critics' eyes is just over the fact that there were children involved. You know, what about the children argument or whatever, and but that could not only lead to me getting to my favorite parts of the film, but it could also get me canceled. I don't know, but because I have 3 favorite parts in the movie. Kind of for different.
Hey, Mark, before you get to your favorite part, I want to ask you guys real quick though, because you touched on something. So I want to ask you guys: do you guys think that there should be limits when it comes to a movie of what you can and can't do, if it has purpose? So if it serves purpose to the story and a vital purpose to the story and adds more depth to someone's character, shouldn't you be able to do twisted things like that in a film to get the point across that, hey, this is what this character is like? Because again, like some of those critics said, it could have been a lot darker.
I wouldn't even go that far. Doesn't have to build any character at all. I think you could do whatever you want. I mean, you want to kill kids on screen. I mean, you know, they're not movie magic and stuff. Like, it's cool with me. But and obviously this came out in one of those times, probably when adults still cared about music that their kids are listening to, like, oh, that's a devil band or some shit. Yeah, I think we're well past that now.
Yeah, we got to remember this was before Eminem too. Eminem versus the People too. So yeah, parents were still very well involved into what their kids watch back in the 90s. So I mean, yeah, that's understandable. Mark, what about you?
Well, I certainly don't think it's a very simple issue. I don't really defend a lot of black and white issues. One of the things I will say, especially when it comes to a movie like this, it's rated R, okay? You know, and yeah, you could say a lot of things about, you know, I mean, yeah, whatever arguments you can make, it's nuanced. But when this film was made, it wasn't the R rating on it was, yeah, this isn't for children. I mean, yeah, you could bring people under 17 into this movie if you're a parent or a guardian, and then of course, obviously the risk became more increased when home video became a thing in the 80s, and of course by the 90s it was well established. But yet still, it's just a matter of, well, I mean, that's what changed the whole scene in movies was the rating system. So if holding the makers of the movie responsible for something like that, like we mentioned earlier, the scene where Henry throws a dummy off a overpass and creates like a multiple vehicle crash, might be imitated. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, that's pretty nuanced. Like you said, oh, how is it that these cases can get passed where like a movie studio would be held responsible or something like that? Well, those laws aren't. That's why we have trials, we have lawyers, we have people like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of funny though. If the movie company loses, you would think that a major company wouldn't lose to any kind of court case. However, it is more common that people will attack smaller movie studios, which do tend to make more exploitive films and probably don't have the kind of money to throw at lawyers to get the sort of things they want out of it. So yeah, but as far as like my personal things go, I don't think this film goes too far. In fact, like I said, there's something extreme in it that I was surprised yet kind of impressed with, honestly. And which is something that I don't think is shown often in movies dealing with children, even if they're horror films. But if you wanted to touch on more, I'll definitely get to what I'm talking about.
I do, yeah, and I mean, and I'm thinking about, one of the guys I work with, he's a parent, right? And I'll never forget about a month or so ago, we were talking about Mortal Kombat, and this dude says, he was like, yeah, I was watching Mortal Kombat the other day, and my two daughters were with me, and it was a little too violent for them. I'm like, bro, you're watching a fucking Mortal Kombat movie. What the fuck? Like, of course it's gonna be fucking violent, you fucking idiot. Like, I'm like, jeez. He was like, yeah, I thought it would be a family friendly. Dude, no. Mortal Kombat. When has Mortal Kombat ever been family friendly? Maybe the old movies were, but no, man. Come on now. Like, some of these parents are still fucking, again, naive, even in real life. So yeah, it's crazy. But Mark, what were your favorite parts of this movie?
All right. Well, I wanted to add one more thing to what you just said.
Okay.
And I think there's an importance here, right? Because, right, we make laws and things like that, through our elected representatives, given what these ideas of what society thinks. Well, this is where I would say, well, this is why we need more emphasis on media literacy in school, especially now when media is ubiquitous. I mean, we carry things in our pockets where we can watch any movie we want almost any time we want, but yet people don't have the tools. I'm not saying they absolutely don't, but they're not given the tools. Like all the things I learned about critical thinking and media literacy and all that stuff, I had to learn in college. I mean, I got a little bit of that, like in 8th grade. I remember I had an English teacher that taught us a little bit about advertising and the kinds of advertising that are done and the things that people do to persuade you and manipulate you. But still, I think an 8th grade English class teaching that, I almost think there should be an entire class for media literacy, and that should be incorporated even into grade school. I mean, that's when these kids' minds are being developed. So, there's that too. I mean, yeah, there's the onus on the parent. It's like, well, sometimes the parent won't even know better, especially if they have nothing to go from. The parents aren't even media literate, and they don't understand exactly what's going on. Like me, you mentioned Mortal Kombat. Like, what was that scene where I think somebody got chopped in half with a buzz saw? That was a fatality scene.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I laughed out loud. And it was because I think, like if I saw a person getting, I would lose my mind, and there would be a lot of money in psychology bills to be paid to recover from that. But I was able to, I was able to separate that in my mind. That's why it was funny to me, because it was so outrageous. I appreciated the imagination that went into it and the skill between whatever kind of effects that they were using. However, not everybody's as media literate as me, if I may blow my own horn,
Yeah. That makes sense, man. Look, at the end of the day, this movie hit it on all cylinders. Well, for a thriller. But yeah, I mean, let's go with your favorite scene.
Okay. Well, one of my favorite scenes is actually a quote from Dr. Davenport. When Mark was asking her about evil. And I love this quote where she said, "Evil is a word people use when they've given up trying to understand something." I thought that was brilliant. I mean, that's kind of a personal thing with me. Even before I started taking philosophy classes, I decided, look, I don't really believe in evil in the sense that inherent evil, like people are born evil or they're born, bad necessarily, there is some force that we call evil. I wouldn't say bad. I would say there's bad and there's good. And evil, depending on how you look at it, like, if it's something inherent, then yeah, I don't buy it. So I really like what Dr. Davenport said there. And that does bring up a question, even though through my eyes, I think the film was definitely more about the psychological aspects, the more about the trauma of the two people, Aunt what was her name? Aunt Susan and Mark, their trauma. And then of course the obvious psychopathic tendencies of Henry.
Yeah, like, and that was your favorite scene, like
it was one. I have three. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the other one just was kind of a kind of a one-off when he says, when Macaulay Culkin, and I love it, and I was dying. "Don't fuck with me, Mark."
Yeah. Where he's coming on that roof, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's something about, little Kevin from Home Alone, dropping, and that was a serious F-bomb. That wasn't, that wasn't played for, that was dead. I just loved it. That was like one of
the way he did it too. The way he did it, because he looked down, he's like, "Oh yeah, one more thing." It's like, yeah, don't fuck with me.
Yeah. One of the best F-bombs in any movie I've ever seen so far, for sure. Okay, and then now I'm going to get really fucking dark, and I'm probably going to be misunderstood for this. Maybe not by you guys, but to other people watching this. Okay, now that ending, we're probably going to talk more about it later, was incredible. But I do have to mention the fact that they showed Henry's bloody body on the rocks in the water at the very end. I was not expecting that. I was not. I mean, I think the only other movie I can think of where they showed a dead kid in a horror movie is Pet Sematary, the original one. I don't know about the second one, but I don't know. Pet Sematary was definitely more horror, and this was thriller. And I thought for sure that it would just be the typical, he falls into the cliff and maybe there's a puddle. I mean, they had his fucking body. I do have to wonder if that was cut out later. But yeah, so that's why it's one of my favorite scenes, because damn, that's bold. Man, that really made it dark. My hat's off. I mean, I'm not pro throwing kids on rocks or anything like that. I'm just talking about it as a fucking movie, as a scene, and the boldness and the courage it took to do that.
Yeah, because it did. It took a lot of courage and it took a lot of boldness to do that. To take a kid and show a dead kid's body. Oh, and by the way, Mark, when you touched on his sister, his real sister, actually playing the sister in the movie, his younger brother Rory Culkin, who is actually on a show on HBO now, was that picture of his little brother, the one that died, is actually a picture of his real younger brother. So, like, his whole damn family's pretty much in this fucking movie at this point. So, yeah, but I mean, dude, and you're absolutely right, because when I watched this movie, you know, I at the very end, when you see his dead body and then like the water comes and washes it away, I'm like, wow, like they really did. Like, I totally forgot that they showed his body when he fell. Like, this movie was fucking nuts, man. Shout out to Sierra. She says, "I'm super late to this convo, but this is a great movie. I definitely watched it way too young, LOL. But I think about this movie all the time and all the psychological gold it has." Wow. She's right though. She's right. This is psychological gold, is what this movie is. I mean, there's so many points in this movie where you have Henry going after each and every person in this movie, maybe except for the dad, probably. But you know, with him and the mom. Now, again, there's times where it kind of took me out of it, and this is kind of where I wouldn't say times, but there was a couple times in this movie where it kind of took me out of the story, and I'm thinking to myself, like, why the fuck would the mom do this? Why would she be like this? So now I'm gonna start getting to the parts where we think they should have done better, and I felt like they should have done better with the mom. They should have done better with Aunt Susan, and not in terms of like her trying to save the day or anything like that, but just her being aware of who her son really is and what her son really is. Because throughout the entire movie, like, yes, at the first half of the movie, she can be as naive as you want her to be, but the fact that after all these years, she still has had a hunch that he killed, you know, her, you know, the other son, his little brother, like, and the fact that, okay, your daughter, every time your daughter goes out with your son, she's always almost being killed or always in danger. And then that ice skating ring part, that part to me was like literally, and again, she really fell, like, she did that. She did her own stunt in that movie as well. Like, they had her fall into like a real fucking like lake, like frozen lake. Obviously they had people like underwater to, you know, obviously help her or whatever. But I mean, like, that part to me was fucking freaky as shit, man. And that's not a part that I would change. But one of the parts that I would change in this movie would be where, you know, Henry is trying to convince his mom. He's trying to convince Susan to, you know, to walk with me. You know, let's go over here. Oh, yes, mommy, yes. And she's all like, oh, son. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is the same evil kid that takes little old Mark, good little kid old Mark, and you catch him with scissors to Henry's neck. This is the same Mark that went and found her when she's out there having her alone time on that cliff. And he's saying, hey, look, your son is demented as fucking all hell. He's fucked up. We got to do something about this. Me and you, moms. Me and you, new mommy. And she, you know what she does? She slaps him. And then she says, look, I don't know what the fuck you're trying to say about Henry, but he's a good kid. He's this and that, blah, blah, blah. Watch what you say. Again, Mark is giving him every single reason. He's showing him. He's saying, look, this kid is crazy, and no one is believing him. So by the time we get to the end of this movie, guess what he's done? He's going crazy himself. Mm. And now, my favorite part of the movie was where him and Henry finally come face to face at the end of that movie, and they start fighting. They're on that cliff. And then, obviously, the ending of the movie is my favorite part. That whole entire ending. Because it's while it's resolved, you don't have to see. There's certain movies where you don't really need to have like a full ending. You don't need to know every single thing that happens. You just need to know he lived and he got through it. He persevered, and yet he's still dealing with that trauma. Now, again, I told you guys what I would change about this movie. If there's anything you you guys would ever change about this movie, what would it be? And Mark, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go and further win the hearts of people who loved me for liking the scene with his body in the rocks. I would say that, and this isn't, not a lot, but there might have been some aspects that I wanted to see a little bit more dark. There was something there that I felt like if there was a brightness level to the movie, maybe a one or two notches, down on that level, and down toward the darkness. That is where they could, I would almost say that they could make it darker in a, gosh forbid, remake. But if somebody could do that and just touch up the darkness on, and yeah, there was something about, I don't know, something about the mom, where, yeah, maybe if there was darkness in something dark in there with her that would not have made her look so like too naive or just too, I don't know. There was just something about it that I wanted
that
to.
Norma Bates feel though, like, because I mean, obviously with him, you're already going to get that. Not even Norma Bates, because but sort of Norma Bates feel like that relationship between the two.
But that is not a big change I would make to the film. I was really impressed with this. I mean, I kind of knew what was coming, but the execution of it was far above and beyond my expectations, for sure, and the way they handled it.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Smith?
Well, there's not a lot you could change because this is in my opinion, it's an expertly crafted film. But that body on the shore, on the rocks down there, is noticeably 6 inches taller than Kevin McAllister. So I thought that was something. I mean, you wouldn't notice, but I was looking. But not to mention,
Nice.
they covered that thing in blood. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like a live leak video of someone falling off something high, but they don't, like, the dude was covered in blood. Like, they just drenched him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was still good. Like, the image is burned into my mind forever. But if I could make like a serious change to this, it would be about the ending. Not to say that the ending was bad, but I would have had it to where, so they're taking their walk or whatever, regardless of what Harry's intentions may be. They get to the cliff. The mother stumbles off, catches herself by accident. Then they start fighting, and then when she comes up, tries to break him up, catches both of them, and then they both die because, like, maybe she, like, one slipping, she goes to grab him, and then they both die. I think that would have been better, or maybe even if she never got wise to Harry's schemes and just dropped the other kid, and then I think that would have put it more in the category of horror, because then they'd have to do like the whole like, oh look, he's still alive, like a weird grin on the camera.
Well,
what's gonna happen now? So yeah,
the
that's
ending literally had me out of my seat. I did not know what was going to happen at the precipice of that cliff, but I mean, it was shot long enough for me to where I just kept moving back and forth and just sort of running over in my mind what could be happening. Like, is she going to let one go? Well, maybe this. I was like, all this speculating was going on. It was going through really fast, but it wasn't enough for me to land on anything until it just actually happened. Yeah, then I was like, gotta be, wow! I was yelling. I stood up. It was fucking amazing.
Shout out to Jared. He says, I need to rewatch this. Yes, Jared, you need to rewatch this movie. This movie is a really great movie. Really great movie. It's going to keep you at the edge of your seat. And I hope that us talking about it and reviewing this here tonight is making you actually rewatch it. Shout out Sierra. She says, yes, I'm about to rewatch this tonight. Yes. The ice skating scene is unforgettable, and the ending, obviously. Yes. But we actually forgot a scene. And it's that scene where, so you remember at the beginning, where it's the cat, and and Henry has that little nail gun or whatever, and he shoots at it and he misses, and he's so serious about that fucking shit, and you can tell where he's standing, where they go and they try and get the nail out, and Kevin's just looking. I said, Kevin, God damn it! Now, Mark, you got me saying Kevin. God damn it, Henry. Henry's looking off, and he's looking off into the distance, and he's like, not. I forgot what he said. He's like, he was like, that man, that's a close shot or something like that. And he's like, not close enough. He's like looking off, and he's so fucking serious. Again, so serious in this fucking movie. And if you really pay attention to this character, look at the only times he actually smiles in this movie. It's never anything good. It's never anything good. And then you come back to that nail scene the next time where they're running away from that dog. The dog's chasing them, and Henry's sitting there barking back at the dog. And that's how you can tell the kid is fucking just nuts. And then literally 5 minutes later, you see him. He's walking up there with the nail gun. You see that dog walking, and Mark's getting him every other fucking target. And he's like, negative. He sees that dog walking across, and I'm like, oh man, shit. And then boom, kills the fucking dog, man. And then they take the dog, throw it into the well, and then that's when they have that little confrontation. And then that's when they start having an even darker turn, because then he starts talking about his dead mom and all that shit. So look, this movie's got a lot of fucking heavy shit in it. And to think about it, this movie's only an hour and 20 minutes long. Not even that long of a
hour 30, I think.
Hour 30 or something like that.
Yeah.
Hour
not
26.
Yeah. Like this movie went straight for the fucking head. And it I feel like after watching this for the first time in 20 years, it never let off the gas. From beginning to end, it never let off the gas. It from the very beginning, it shows you what this kid is about. And again, like you said, Mark, the word of the night when it comes to this movie is trauma. Trauma. This kid's fucked up, and he's fucking up everyone else around him, and the mom has to choose. And think about the title of this movie, The Good Son. Man, that's crazy. Because it's actually talking about Mark. Yeah. Mark being the good son. Like, wow, man.
Really? I thought it was kind of an ironic title. Like The Good Son.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Shout out to Terry the neighbor, man. Terry, what's up, man? So now I want to ask you guys about your grades. And me not knowing, after I asked you guys about this movie, about why, reviewing if you guys want to review this movie, I never knew you guys would like this movie so much. Because at first I was kind of skeptical about it, but then I watched it earlier today.
I didn't know I would like it so much either.
I was like, man, I really hope to like this movie, because I really, really love this movie after watching it again. So Mark, I'm going to start with you and ask you about your grade. What grade would you give this movie, and why?
Okay, before that, I just had two little thoughts. One, when he shot and missed the cat. I'm a cat lover. I had to laugh out loud because that cat did not give a shit. That cat was just like, that cracked me up. That just said, that's definitely a cat. And two, the one thing I thought about changing the movie was the beginning. I mean, we were kind of talking about this pre-show about how Dad drives Mark from Arizona to Maine. When he has a 2-week trip that he needs to take to Tokyo, that must be done, right after his mother's funeral. So why is he taking a week to taking this kid across the country? And there wasn't really even a lot of payoff in that trip. I mean, there was because the reason why I thought of that was because Smith said the masterfully, I'm like, there was some really good shots in that traveling scene, the beautiful desert scenes, the beautiful Maine scenes, the terrain and everything. But like story-wise, there wasn't a whole lot of payoff going on there. But mind you, even like going back to what I said about Darkness, and with this, not too much, but they could have cut off a little bit more. I mean, they definitely gave us some pretty pictures to look at with that.
Facts.
Yeah. But to my grade, okay. I mentioned this at the beginning, and this plays very much into my rating for it. categorizing this film as a psychological thriller. Definitely, like, wow. Talk about the reason for the name psychological thriller. Like I said, from now on, if somebody ever asked me, and I don't know why it would come up, what's a movie that you would say is the epitome of psychological thrillers? I would definitely say The Good Son. So, and because it was thrilling as hell, it had me on the edge of my seat. And like we were talking about the time, hour and 26 minutes. I was honestly, that was one of my first thoughts. I'm like, oh, finally we're gonna have a movie that's an hour and a half instead of these like 2-3 hour epic blockbuster movies that are so commonplace these days. And wow, does this movie? It's one and done. It makes its point. It gets in and it gets out. I wouldn't say you want more, but there's a payoff to it. There's just something about it where, yeah, the brevity of it just makes sense. Not too much, not too little. That's really great. So I give it an A.
All right. Okay. All right, Smith. What about you?
Well, the thing that usually affects my gradings generally is poor plot devices, which is why I hate Star Wars now, because the Force just explains everything. Like, oh yeah, it was the Force. It was fucking space magic, dude. Don't you know that? Which I'm glad you brought this up about the trip, the whole Tokyo thing. They definitely could have come up with something better there. Like, oh, maybe you should just stay with your aunt while I handle the affairs of my dead wife. Like, I don't know. That would have been clean cut, simple. I don't even know why the fuck this dude is going to Tokyo or what he does. So, I don't know. Why'd they even bring a city up? Like, just say business trip. I don't care where he's going. But yeah, outside of that, it's there's no plot holes. It's really seamless and it's really well done. And I would give it an A+. Which I don't know if I've given anything else an A+, but yeah, A+.
No, this is your first.
Word. Okay. So with this movie, I have to agree with both of you guys on this, because the plot was not only just heavy, but it was awesome. It got straight to the point. From beginning to end, you're at the edge of your seat. If you're being told that this movie is a psychological thriller, before going in it, then you somewhat are expecting a little bit of, some kind of, maybe not mystery, but, intense moments. This movie's full of them. This movie's full of intense moments, great acting, at least from the kids, great acting for kids. And putting them in a situation like this, dude, I got to give this movie an A+, because from scene to scene to scene, you're thinking, what can possibly go wrong? What's going to come next? How more twisted is this kid going to get? And it just keeps going further and further and further. And they continue pushing the envelope as this movie goes on. And then the very end is when it smacks you right in the face and it says, look, evil has to be, you have to confront evil face to face. And that's kind of what they did at the end of this movie. They confronted that evil face to face. And to me, for two 12-year-olds at a time, this is as best as you can get.
Yeah.
Now,
amazing performances.
Yes, amazing performances, man. And again, this is a movie that I feel like was definitely overlooked. And like you said, Mark, and it makes a lot of sense, because what a lot of the critics were saying at the time was they're talking about the moral issues. Mm-hmm. Well, instead of talking about moral issues, we need to talk about the quality of the fucking movie, because the quality of this movie was amazing.
This movie needs reconsideration, because, yeah, I mean, it didn't deserve the moralizing. This movie wasn't punching down. It wasn't glorifying any negativity or anything like that. Oh, it was just a bunch of moralizing bullshit. And, because, kids are involved in something bad. No. Reconsider it. People need to take another look.
Yes, please. They would have to reconsider this movie. Fucking amazing movie. I do want to ask you guys one last question. And Mark, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Do you guys see I'm not saying do you guys see, but do you think there could be a good chance of them rebooting this movie at some point in the future? Probably making it a teen thriller, like a teen psychological thriller? Because I think now that we already saw that two amazing young actors do this, why not see something like this as like a, maybe two 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, kind of make it a little bit more intense. You can make it a darker movie with actual teenagers in the movie. Smith, I'll start with you. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can foresee that
Mhm.
because it's already got such a bad rating. I mean, I don't know many people even know about this movie existing. If they
Mhm.
did do a reboot and it was like a teenage thing, it'd probably be awful. Like, it's already such a good film. Like, why do you want to? Why would you even touch it? It seems like it'd be messed up.
So if someone came to you and they said, "Hey Smith, we will let you reboot this movie," you'd say no.
If I'm directing it, yeah, but like, I'm not directing shit, dude. I'm not in charge of it. So,
Mark, what about you? If all right, I'll ask this: if someone came to you and said, "Mark, could you reboot this movie?" First of all, would you say yes? And if you do say yes, what would you make it?
Well, um, and I say this very carefully because I would say yes. There's just a little caveat to that, but I would say yes under the uncertain circumstances. One, uh, that this is a great story, and this was well executed, and it is related to my it needs reconsideration. Um, so maybe bringing it to a new audience or something like that would. However, um, I would really have a tough time imagining anyone like I will say it's remakeable. I don't know if it would be improved upon, but I think there are a few things that could be done a little differently that would still make it good and still make it worthwhile. However, I don't know who I would put in charge of that, whose capable hands I would put that in. Um, although I do gotta wonder though if there was some way to bring this movie to a wide audience once again. If uh, I wonder like how it would go over with audiences in 2021. I don't know. I mean, I could speculate a little, but things were different. I know this is kind
30
of a
years ago.
dumbass word, but cancel culture was a lot different back 30. Like some
Yeah.
people think this is a new thing. Well, you haven't lived through the satanic panic, like this. So cancel culture was different back then than it is now. I honestly think that it's now more about punching down and maybe glorifying kind of shitty things. And I don't think this movie does either one of those things. However, on the same side, I think there is certain people that would be just, oh, what about the children about it? So I don't know. But either way, I do think, given the kind of criticism that I see about movies, it would be more of a critic's darling had more critics nowadays watch it, regardless of what audiences think of it.
I mean, because we got it and It Chapter Two. Chapter
Yeah,
Two didn't
yeah.
really,
I think we
obviously,
do have
but
some despite how stupid people look, I do think there are a great deal of very intelligent people that need to see this film and could remake this film and could see it for what it is.
yes, yes, my point exactly. Um, is there anything else you guys want to say about this movie?
um, yeah, for all of the streaming service CEOs in the audience, maybe just put this back in the catalog. We don't need a reboot because people see it again and change their minds. But yeah, that's for
Uh,
Jeff Bezos. I know he's watching, right? So, put it on
off,
Amazon.
off Netflix. Put this on here now. Put this on there now. Um, but yes, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to let you guys know before we get out of here. I want to let you guys know that we are doing the HAP Film Panel here in a few minutes as well. So hop back on this channel here in a few minutes once we log off of here. But thank you guys for coming in here and reviewing and joining in with us while we're reviewing The Good Son, starring Elijah Wood and Macaulay Culkin. They obviously went on to do really great things on our life. Well, Elijah Wood, at least. I mean, Macaulay Culkin. But I don't know. But yes, Mark, where can people find you, man?
All right. You want to talk more movies, more pop culture? You want to talk music, television, toys with me? Or find out what I think about certain things like that? Catch me on the WalterPaisleyCafe.com. You can also catch me under that name, also my own name, Mark Plaid, and my art business name, Spidau. That's SCHPIDAUU, at the three major social media outlets that I use: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And don't forget, guys, I got all the links in the description right now. So make sure you guys head down into the description area. Make sure you guys hit that like and that subscribe as well. All that other bullshit. Look, I am me. This is Smith. This is Mark. We are Half-Ass Pod with a film panel. And we, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be back in just a few minutes. But we're also OUNT.